Good day, grade 11, grade 10 life science students. And thank you very much for your connection and subscription to Metric Hub. Don't forget that you can as well connect your friends, your sisters, your brothers from grade 8 to post-metric, grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, as well as post-metric netted is also uh, done here, your best channel of choice, one-stop channel for your academic success. I just want to quickly today talk about geological timescale. So, without wasting any time, I want us to understand that there are some geological timescales that the Earth is divided into, which we are going to discuss into today's presentation. As you can see, these are various timescales that we have where various organisms existed and they extincted. So we're going to talk about this. We are going to talk about we are going to talk about also we are going to talk about also the various eras that we have or periods that we have, and then the mass extinction. What is mass extinction? What actually characterizes mass extinction, characteristics of mass extinction, formation of fossils and methods of dating of fossils, fossilization. I'm sure that in your syllabus it's quite important that you understand factors affecting fossilization, ideal conditions for formation of fossils. We are going to discuss these quite deep right now, and we're going to talk about we're gonna also talk of the processes in terms of types of fossils. We're gonna talk about methods of dating of fossils, the relative dating, and also the absolute dating techniques that we must understand. How are they working? I'm sure that you still remember. For example, I just talked about the stratigraphy as a method of dating of fossils, and then we're gonna actually look into this and explain the formation of fossils in sedimentary rocks. I'm sure I remember how sedimentary rocks are formed. And in that respect, also, we need to understand types of fossils or how fossils are formed in sedimentary rocks. So, all these, we're going to discuss them today. Just be patient and follow the presentation. So, without wasting any time, geological timescale is a calendar of events in the Earth's history. When we talk about geological timescale, we refer to geological timescale. It actually refers to calendar, which means time. We are referring to issues to do with time. It is about time of events in the Earth's history. It actually shows major geological and climatic events as in terms of factors and processes that affected the Earth, and also climatic conditions that were involved, the climatic events and how these events affected the emergence and disappearance of species. I'm sure, remember, and I'm sure you can actually understand the emergence. We are talking about the existence or the formation of various species and also their disappearance over time. These cannot be separated from what? From climatic events. Climate affects organisms' existence. Climate affects the establishment of organisms and the time length of organisms to exist within or over a given landscape. So geology, we are looking at whatever happens within a given geographical location, as well as the climatic events that might also affect how organisms might appear and also come to an end and extinction. So in order to help us and in order to help us make sense of this vast amount of time, scientists actually divided it into smaller units. So the geological time scale are actually divided or are actually scaled into smaller units or into smaller units of time in order for us to make sense and understand them better. So in that respect, we are saying the calendar of events. That is why we can also talk about years. We can also talk about days. We can talk about about centuries, we can talk about decades, we can talk about what. So in other words, we are saying in order to understand events very well, they are divided into time units, they are divided into specific period of time. So therefore, we can be able to relate and account them very well. So scientists actually estimate that the Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. To say from the time the Earth existed up to now, it is about 4.6 billion years from the start to, I mean, from the establishment to this date of Earth creation. So geological timescale divide the Earth's history into three main eras. There are three main eras, which we say one, they are the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, S2, and then they are the Coenozoic, S3. These are three uh, Earth's history, or these are three geological timescales in which the Earth's history is divided into. So we're gonna look into them. Each of these eras are divided into periods. So what happens is that we are saying understanding of this is actually divided into specific time periods. So the periods that precedes Paleozoic era is known as the pre-Cambrian. We are going to talk about what is pre-Cambrian in our presentation now. The preceding is saying that it started before the Paleozoic. It is the pre-Cambrian. So I'm sure you remember and you understand that in your syllabus, it is a must that you know also need to know these various geological events, and sometimes you'll also be asked to identify the existence of time from when up to when, so we can also calculate the number of years of existence of various species or various events that we can look at. So, and also compare their differences in time of existence. So we have got the era in the first column here, we have got the era there, and then we do have the time in million of years ago. I'm sure I remember you are quite aware that in life science we talk about million of years ago as Maya, and then important events that occurred in those times, the various important events that occurred that time. So our geological timescale is given from the oldest, which is from we are saying the oldest. We are starting from the oldest. This we are starting from below, from the oldest, and then it is going. Time is going. We are accounting on these events going up. We are accounting on these events to say this is the present day. This is the present day situation. So what happened is that it is the newest, oldest to the newest. So the pre-Caribbean, we can see that the oldest the Paleozoic fossils existed 3.5 million years ago. That we can see. We are saying the pre-Caribbean season or era, the pre-Caribbean era, it actually runs from 3.5 million years ago to 540 million years ago. So all this period, it is accounting to the pre-Caribbean. So we have got the oldest paracotype fossils that are the oldest was there, and then the oldest, I mean, oxygen begins to accumulate in the atmosphere about 2,500 years ago. So we are talking about the beginning of vegetation. We are talking about the beginning of vegetation, which existed or which started 2.5 million years ago. And then we have got the oldest eukaryotic fossils, which also saying that this was the time period that we can talk about to 2,100 years ago. And then simple multicellular organisms evolve, which we can say that that was 700 million years ago. That is actually saying the pre-Caribbean season, it actually existed from oldest of its 3.5 to actually ending up to 540 years, 540 million years ago. And then in this case, we also talk about the Paleozoic, which we can see the various organisms, the most important events that took place. The Paleozoic, which we are seeing also there, the Paleozoic, which we are also identifying here. So what we are supposed to understand is that there is plant colonize the land, as we can see, there is vegetation there. We have got also the amphibian appear, as you can see, for example, water-loving plants, I mean organisms which are found there. We have got these reptiles that also came in during the Paleozoic era. And then we also have the first insects where we have got those maybe butterflies. We have got also some bacteria or snails and organisms that came during that time. And then what we need to understand is that it existed from 540 to 240 million years ago. And then we have got mass extinction when there was massive death of organisms, which includes both plants and animals, which started or which happened 280 million years ago. So we also have the Mosaic era, which is having the first dinosaur, which occurred 230. Birds evolved from reptiles, the evolution, where you can see that birds are a development of organism from what? From the dinosaur. So that is why you see the birds look like they have a tail-like structure. They have something like a tail on them. And then first flowering plants 141 million years ago, which we can see there. That is one other thing that we can talk about. And then in that regard, we have got also, it ends, the Paleozoic era ended, where we have got those organisms died or they perished about 66.4 million years ago. So what happened also during the Cenozoic era, we have got the ice age, which we have also these organisms which also came into existence. We have got the hippopotamus, we have got the elephants, and every other organism that we can talk about. And then less than zero point 0.1 million years ago, that's when the modern man started, or the establishment of a modern man, which we are seeing there. So the present time is we are talking about the Homo sapien or the modern man, which is uh, today zero point zero million years. So now what you need to understand is this is normally given in your in it usually comes as a graph or as it is there. And then what you actually supposed to do is to be able to read and follow the time frames or the timelines which are asked per each organism and the various eras that are there, and also to identify to say in which era do we have such a certain event occurring. Obviously, what you do is you look at these organisms versus the various eras that are given there, and then you'll be able to what? To answer every other question that comes there. So in most cases, we actually don't need to memorize this. We are not in a way try to say that we need to memorize the eras as they are, but it is usually given as it is in this graph that you are seeing here. And then what comes to or what needs to be understood by a student is that you relate given questions to the geological timescale that you are given, and then you can calculate and identify every other question that might arise in this regard. So this is what happens there. So let's just quickly talk about the next uh, item, the Caribbean explosion. The Caribbean explosion, we are to look at the early forms of most animals group appeared in the Caribbean period. The most animal, the early forms of most animals, or many of the animals, they appeared during the Caribbean period. So Caribbean explosion, it actually refers to the diversity of life, the beginning of variety of life, the beginning of variety of of organisms on the earth. You understand? So that appeared in a relatively short period of time. So various organisms that appeared did not stay or did not live long. They actually lasted for a short period of time. That is one thing that we should understand. So it was a period of rapid uh, diversification of animals, of animal life that occurred roughly 530 539 to 518 million years ago. During that time, most of the major animals, the fairly body plants, the body plants that exist today appeared in the fossil record. So what we can say is that it actually explains the idea of evolution. It actually explains the idea of evolution, where the diversity of life or biodiversity, the variety of organisms that we have today, they are an explanation, or they show that such organisms also existed millions of years ago, as we can refer to the body plants that we have, which we can see in the fossil records. We are looking in fossil records right now. It was a significant event in the history of life on Earth, marking transition. We are saying marking transition, which is marking change. It's a change from simpler organisms to diverse animal life we see today. So there is a sophistication of life that came as a result of adaptation, as a result of various geological events. So events that took place historically transformed the organisms that we see today versus the one that lived millions of years ago. You understand? So what is mass extinction? Define mass extinction. Mass extinction class. Mass, it means many. Mass extinction occurs when many species disappear over the same period of time. Many species, many organisms, a given many organisms, they disappear over the same period of time. So there have been 5 mass extinction throughout history, which we can talk about. There are about 5 of them throughout history, 2 of which are particularly important. That is the extinction of about 90% of all life on Earth. That is 250 million years ago, and the extinction of many species, including the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago. I'm sure as you can refer to the geological timescale that we just discussed right now, that we can see. So the disappearance of many species over the same period of time is what we call mass extinction. So the present time has been called the sixth extinction because of the negative effect of human effect on environment. So humans are now causing uh, many organisms to die. We are talking about negative effects, the impact of human activities on the environment. I'm sure this we cannot deny it. Various pollution activities, urbanization, every other mechanical and developmental projects people are doing are causing the death of various organisms that we can define as mass extinction. So it is a geological period where a large number of plant and animal species disappear. We are saying geological as time period, number of plant and animal species disappear on Earth within a relatively short period of time. So these are characterized by significant biodiversity loss. There is loss of variety of lives, which is in terms of the organisms and stuff. So, and can also have profound evolutionary consequences. We are saying has got very important implications in evolutionary uh, explanations. So there have been 5 major, which we can talk about, explaining the sixth extinction due to human activities that we talked about now, that we have already mentioned. So let's quickly look at fossil formation and methods of dating. What is fossilization? Fossilization basically is the process by which the remains or traces of once living organisms once existed organisms are preserved in rock and other geological formations. So organisms, their remains, meaning to say these organisms, they have died. So their remains, which can be found in preserved in rocks or other geological forms or formations, is what we call fossilization. So the most common type of fossilization actually involves the formation of sedimentary rocks as a type of rock. I'm sure that we know. And then where layers of sand and mud accumulate and compress over time, hardening into rock. So layers of sand and mud, they do accumulate and compress over time, hardening to form rocks. So a fossil is a complete organism or the remains. We can find it as a complete as a full organism, meaning the bones and teeth and parts of those remains of the organism that cannot decompose, or it can be imprints. Imprints, we are saying these can be found as tracings or tracings which can be found on of an organism that is usually preserved in a rock, preserved in rocks. I'm sure if we can see where an organism, maybe it might have died there. So the way it was lying, it can give a shape, it can give an imprint, it can give a tracing, which can show how the organism looked like. So based on that, we are able to understand the ancient organisms that might have lived. Sedimentary rocks is formed when clay and sand particles are carried from one place to another by water and mud and wind. Over thousands of years, these sediments pile up, harden, and form sedimentary rocks, which also fossils are found in trees, tree resin, ice, and volcanic lava. So volcanic lava, again, where volcanoes have occurred, they might also happen that organisms which might have been buried like millions of years ago can also be exposed. So we want to quickly look into factors affecting fossilization, ideal factors that are causing fossil formation, ideal factors contributing towards fossil formation. That's what we want to quickly look at. So we have got ideal factors, hard parts. For fossils to form, there must be hard parts that must be found. Organisms with hard parts, like we can talk about the bones, we can talk about the shells, we can talk about the teeth, are more likely to fossilize than those with soft tissues. Soft tissues, obviously, what happens? They decompose, class. They decompose. So hard parts, we are saying ideal factors for fossilization. There must be hard parts of the organisms, which are such as those ones that we have identified. There must be rapid burial. For fossilization to take place, there must be rapid burial in sediment. Rapid burial in sediment helped protect remains from scavengers and decomposition. So when an organism, we are talking about animals that feed on dead carcasses, these are scavengers. Animals feeding on dead animals. So what happens is rapid burial, it actually sediments, we are saying deposits. These are deposits that can protect the bury the remains from scavengers and also decomposition, meaning to say decomposition cannot take place because they are actually piled by the sand and the sand soils and by the sand that is actually the mud that is actually covering them. And then there must be also number three, there must be suitable sediments, sediments like fine-grained mud, silty, sand are ideal for preserving fossils. So suitable sediments, we can talk about this, we can talk about silty, we can talk about sand, which are actually good for preserving fossils. And then absence of oxygen, again, is number four. Factors causing fossilization, absence of oxygen, low oxygen in environment slow down decomposition. So therefore, what happens is that the body of the organism cannot decompose, but it can just dry and become just an intact, buried, dead carcass that is there. So absence of oxygen actually helps to reduce decomposition. Therefore, we can be able to see those remains. And then chemical conditions, we are talking about chemical composition of the surrounding environment can affect how minerals replace organic materials, which is point number five, chemical conditions. So having said that, let's quickly talk about types of fossils. We have got body fossils. These are preserved remains of the organisms itself, such as the bones, the teeth, and the shell. We talked about that as number one types of fossils. We can also have uh, carbonaceous films. These are the films of carbon residue that preserved the outline of an organism. We are saying there are films that can also carbon residue that can preserve the outline, which can be given to show how the organism looked like. And then let's look into methods of dating of fossils. Methods of dating of fossils are relative dating. We have got relative dating as number one. We also have absolute dating as number two. So now what we need to understand is that relative dating compares the fossil's age to other fossils or rock of known age. It actually is a comparative. We are saying relative. It actually compares the fossil's age to the other fossils or rocks of known ages. That is what we do. I'm going to explain it deep now, just below there. So, uh, obsolete dating uses techniques like radiometric dating to determine the numerical age. There is what you call absolute dating, which we are going to talk about also just now. Actually, that is another method that can be used to explain this dating of fossils. So let's just talk about relative dating. The relative dating is the method of determining the order. It actually determines the order is in terms of the piling of events from the fossil record or the appearance of fossils of events from the fossil record. Actually, what happens is uh, it is done by studying the order in which the fossils occur, the order in which the fossils occur in the fossil record, where geologists, we are saying scientists who study the earth, so can determine the order of events as they occurred, but not when exactly they occurred. They can actually identify the order of events as they occur, but not when exactly they occur. So fossils found at the lowest layer Fossils that are found on the lowest layer of the rock would be the oldest, as these would have been buried for the longest time, whereas fossils found closer to the surface would be buried more recently and therefore be young. So the geological timescale uh, studied earlier was almost entirely developed by relative dating methods and is useful for a method of dating when fossil materials lack radioactive isotopes. So what we are saying is that looking at this, we can give it as a typical example of we can give it as an example of a soil profile that we can give class to say when we look at these layers, obviously accumulation of sediments, it is by the way they are dying or they are appearing. So what we can say is that the the newest is found closer to this is the surface. We are looking at this as the surface of the earth. So now what we can find underneath, what we are finding underneath there is totally different, is older than what can be found on the next profile. And then also, we can also find that also saying that the third profile has got also a different type of material that or the different age. So looking at this, what we are saying is that I can give to say red is the oldest, considering the profile. We are saying considering the profile. So the lowest layer, which is red layer, the lowest layer is the oldest of is the oldest layer of rock would be the oldest, as this would have been buried for the longest time, because what we are saying is the accumulation was appearing as like this, they were appearing going up like that class. So obviously, the ones which are found on the lowest level are the oldest, followed by the other ones until, and then we can say oldest is the red to the newest or most recent is what is black, according to the illustration that I've shown here. According to our illustration that I'm showing, we are saying red, which you can see there. We are saying our red is the oldest. It is found on the lowest profile. And then the black is found on the what? On the highest profile, which means it is closer to the surface. It is closer to the surface. Hence, it can mean that the red is the oldest. So we are saying this is showing that the the fossils found closer to the surface would have been buried more recently. So more recently buried, most or newest or recent is the black, according to the illustration that we have just given there. That is at the relative dating. So geologists can determine that by order of events as they have occurred, but not exactly when they occurred, based on the profiling of the fossils. To say the deepest one is the oldest, it would have been buried for the longest time compared to the one that is closer to the surface. So hence we are able to calculate the time period which they occurred. So absolute dating, the radiometric dating, in order to understand this one, it is necessary for us to understand to have our understanding of the atom class of the atom. So the nucleus of an atom is made up of protons and neutrons. I'm sure this we need to refer to it, so therefore we can understand the radiometric dating that we are talking about. So what we need to understand is that the number of protons in the nucleus define what type of an element it is. Number of protons that are found in the nucleus, they actually mean what type of element it is. So, however, the number of neutrons of an element may vary anyway. There is not what may vary, meaning to say is not constant, is not constant. So atoms with the same number of protons but different numbers of neutrons are called isotopes. I'm sure that we still remember there. So some isotopes are stable while others are unstable. Isotopes are some of them stable and others are not. So atoms which have the same number of protons but different number of neutrons are called isotopes. So unstable isotopes undergo a process called radioactive decay. Uh, unstable ones they undergo radioactive decay, whereby they spontaneously change to elements of different type. We are saying they randomly change to elements of different type. So we can never predict when in a specific atom will undergo radioactive decay. However, when considering atoms, we can observe that decay occurs at a spontaneous decay rate. So exponential decay means that at a certain period of time called a half-life, half of the unstable isotopes in a sample will undergo radioactive decay. So now the carbon atoms exist as three different isotopes, which are carbon 12, we have got carbon 13, and carbon 14. They are carbon atoms that we can talk about. So after an organism dies, it no longer incorporates new carbon atoms or new carbon into its body. The carbon 14 present within them undergoes radioactive decay to uh, nitrogen 14 and decrease from the original equilibrium with carbon 12. So thus using radiocarbon dating, scientists can determine how much carbon 14 remains within a particular fossil and thereby interfere or can be able to relate to the age of a fossil. So this is what we call radioactive dating. By understanding the structures of atoms, we need to understand uh, how an atom look like. and then nucleus of an atom, which is made of protons and neutrons, and then we can understand the three carbon atoms that can exist and how to these can be used in a relationship of radiometric dating. So scientists can actually determine how old carbon-14 remains within a particular fossil, because when an organism dies, it can no longer gain any more of those atoms. So formation of fossils in sedimentary rocks is the last part that we can just want to look at. These rocks form from layers of sediments, which we are saying piled layers. We are talking about layers of sediments, as to say they form like from piles silt that accumulate over time, bearing organisms and their remains. And then over millions of years, the sediments compact and hardens, forming the hardens, forming rock and preserving organisms within. How does the process occur? We can actually want to understand that there is sediment deposition. Sediment, we are talking about material that has been carried by various agents of erosion. So the sediments are laid off, that is sediment deposition. When an organism dies, its remains, which is identified as the bones, the shell, etc., or the teeth, can quickly be covered by sediments, which can often, we are saying often in bodies of water like rivers, lakes, and so forth. The reason why we talk about these ones, they are the agents which carries them. They are the ones which transport them. They are carried by what? By these rivers, lakes, and so forth. So over time, more layers of sediment accumulate, burying the remains deeper and deeper. I'm sure I remember we can refer to this as we look in siltation of water bodies, where when carried loads are deposited into river reservoir, into water sources, they are going to, or they normally get buried because of the accumulation of newer and newer sediments as they come in. So compaction and sedimentation, the weight of the overlaying layers of the sediment compress the lower layers, squeezing out water and air. That is why we also talk about what? About the we are looking at the formation of sedimentary rocks. So there is compaction and cementation, which is caused because of the overlaying layers that compress the lower layers, and then taking out water and air out of them, piling them or squeezing them up. So dissolved minerals in the water can then precipitate out, acting like cement to bind the sediment particles together, forming what? The sedimentary rock. So basically, this is what we are talking about in terms of the formation of sedimentary rocks class. And then lastly, I just have a picture of a sedimentary rock that you can look at. We are talking about the fossilization or the formation fossilization process, which we can also give as to say that we are talking about the sedimentary rock formation. You understand? So we are having an example here, which you can see that it's a rock structure that is formed by through the processes that we just identified, the sedimentation, sediment deposition, and then the compaction and cementation, which actually allows the dissolved minerals in water and to actually come out. So therefore, they act like cement to bind the sediment particles together. That is to say, when a dead material, a dead animal is buried, the squeezing out of water that is within it, it acts as cement to bring together particles together, and then it therefore results in the formation of sedimentary rocks. Class, thank you very much for your time. I hope that you have understood and you have learned enough. Without wasting your time and adding more, let us just call this a day and just keep on connected, and then we can be able to uh, check in on new content coming, and we are going to do it together until end of the term. Have a good day. Don't forget to subscribe